Salmon River had been on my bucket list for years. And it turned out to be for good reason. Vast wilderness area, white sand beaches, lots of sunshine. What more could you ask for a vacation? Well, for my part of this presentation, I'm going to tell you about the rafts, the thrilling rapids, and first the wildlife. Now, probably the most exciting wildlife we came across was a rattlesnake. One day we were working on setting up, everyone was looking for their spot to set up camp for the night. There was a brushy part. We were in a kind of a primitive campsite, and somebody just about stepped on a rattlesnake. Well, Lane, one of the forest ranger's wives, said, "Somebody's got to shoot that. Anybody got a gun?" Well, as it turns out, I had a brand new 9mm that I hadn't even tried yet. I pulled it out. Tom, one of the forest rangers, also had a gun in his raft, but I drew mine quicker. Well, I headed up towards the rattlesnake with Jeff, our trip leader. Now, Jeff worked for the military for years as a scientist. He was a very avid hunter, and I could tell he was extremely anxious to shoot this rattlesnake. So I turned over my new gun to him. We took care of that rattlesnake, but it left me, and I think a lot of other people, with the question, is there more? Is there a whole den full of rattlesnakes nearby? Well, that night, the two construction workers started sleeping in a tent like Mary and I. And nobody set up their tent in the vicinity of the rattlesnake. But that is where the groover ended up. So when I went up around dusk to use the groover, I was extremely careful looking in all the brush for any sign of rattlesnakes. Well, we did see a lot of other wildlife on this trip. We saw an osprey came down low, right over not very high off of our raft, carrying a fish. Unfortunately, my camera wasn't ready. I did get a picture of this osprey in a tree. We saw a bald eagle. We saw little bighorn sheep. We saw big bighorn sheep. This was a ram across the river from us. We also saw a lot of waterfowl along the river. A bunch of mergansers were swimming alongside us. We watched otters playing. And these aren't exactly wildlife, but there were 4 dogs on the trip, and they were really quite entertaining. And we absolutely are going to bring Reva the next time we go. Now, I mentioned I'd talk about rafts. This is our raft. It's an Air Super Puma. It's really on the small side. It's 14 feet and kind of narrow. The other end of the spectrum, that was Jeff's raft, the trip leaders. His is 18 feet, big, wide raft that can carry lots of gear and tends to float over things. Then there was Tom and Kathy's rafts. Now, they're both ex-forest rangers, and they're married. And for some reason, they each have their own raft. I'm thinking maybe it saves fights. Going down the river, there's a special order. Jeff was always in the front, scouting, picking the best line down the river. He knew the river very well, had been rafting it for 25 years. At the back was Tom, who was in what would be called sweep position. He was watching, making sure everyone was okay and ready to rescue anyone if they needed it. Now, I knew this group all had rafted together for years and was quite experienced and was going to be keeping a close eye on Mary and I. And we didn't want to let on that we hadn't rowed our raft down a river for 6 years now. We were a bit out of practice. We got to the first big rapids. And by the way, the Salmon River at this level is what would be called technical. There's a lot of boulders and a lot of maneuvering to not run into boulders. If you did run over a boulder, you stood the chance that if it was a sharp boulder, you could rip your raft open, which would really be a bummer way back in the wilderness. So the first rapids, coming up to a boulder, we're doing a few strokes to slide by the boulder. I have been kayaking in the last 6 years, and rafts don't move nearly as fast as kayaks. Well, we slammed right into that boulder, and then I turned around and I looked. Sure enough, there was Tom watching us. He's probably thinking, oh God, I hope these guys know what they're doing. Well, pretty soon, Mary and I got back into the groove. And I don't mean the groover groove. I mean, we remembered how to raft, and we started maneuvering quite well with our small, lightweight raft. Oh, this is Tom, by the way, coming down. By the time 3 days later we came to one of the bigger rapids, to Big Mallard, and there's these two boulders. The way they line up, it's very tricky to squeeze between them, and there's current that carries people over. I think we were one of the only ones that didn't get slammed into either boulder. Now on the last day, Lisa, Mary, and I all had to get back to work early. So Lisa's raft and our raft, we split off from the rest, and we continued much farther down the river the last day, all the way towards the end. This left us with Vinegar Rapids, a big rapids to run, without Jeff in the front scouting, or without Tom in the back. By this point, Lisa had enough confidence in Mary and our river running ability that she said, why don't you guys go first? Which is what we did. I looked down, picked a line down the rapids. We headed down, ran it just fine, turned into an eddy at the bottom. I grabbed my camera just in time to get pictures of Lisa and her crew coming down. Now what these rapids do, they dropped over a ledge here, went down into a hole, and that's actually a big raft with 3 people in it. Here they are climbing out of the hole, and here they are going down into another one. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a terrified look on Ole's face. This rapid was fun. To me, it was the most exciting rapids on the trip, and the best pictures I got of a rapids. So it was a wonderful way to end the trip. A couple miles downriver, we packed up our gear, had the long drive home, and on the way home, I just thought about what river can we run next?